Conversations with Azu Ishiekwene.
Well, it's 20 years since the BBC gave us a survey covering about 65 countries, precisely in October 2003, that the happiest people on the globe were in Nigeria. What is the situation with you today? Are you happy? Welcome to Deepening the Conversation, our interactive segment of Conversation with Azu, a weekly diary on life and politics. Today, Azu is talking to Rich Nigerians, and his column is titled "A Letter to Rich Nigerians: Why the Poor Are Mad." Mad here does not suppose that the poor are going berserk. It's just maybe an alternative explanation for anger. So, with me in the studio is Azu, who is going to talk to us about why the poor are mad in Nigeria. Welcome to the show, Azu.
Thanks for having me again, Julius. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
Your letter to rich Nigerians, and my assumption is that by rich Nigerians, you are not referring to the likes of Aliko Dangote or Femi Otedola or Funsho Alakija and others in that class. My assumption is you're probably referring to local government chairmen and members of their council, state governors and their cabinets, and members of the state assemblies, and perhaps the Federal Executive Council with President Tinubu at its head, and members of the National Assembly. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yes and no. You are correct in the sense that I explicitly, of course, mentioned some of those that you have you referred to in your opening comments. But I think it also goes beyond them. I understand that some of the persons who mentioned the name are in the private sector and therefore have a slightly different sort of responsibility, if you like, to society and the community. But to be honest, if the chips are down, I don't think that there'll be a distinction between whether you are a private rich or you are a public rich. I think that if the chips are down, you never know. So I think in a sense, the rich in that context refers to a much broader category of Nigerians. Yes.
Okay, and a quick follow-up based on my assumption of who the rich are. From day to day, ordinary Nigerians are spending more and more on food and transportation, and only those who perhaps live on the public purse, I'm sorry to use that expression, are not complaining. How long is this likely to go on?
Well, it's also important to keep in mind, as I said in the article, that food inflation hotspots are not limited to Nigeria only. There are food inflation hotspots in different parts of the world. In fact, I think the World Bank did a survey that showed that about 170 countries are actually badly affected by food inflation. So there is a sense in which that it's a global problem. Coming, of course, after COVID, after the supply chain crisis following the Russia-Ukraine war. But to come to the question of how long we will have to, but as I also said in the article, different countries are finding different ways of adapting or dealing with this issue of inflation, especially of food inflation. In Nigeria, unfortunately, food inflation constitutes the real bulk of the challenge that most ordinary folks are facing. And you're also right, energy costs have gone up significantly, and transportation costs sort of quadrupled after the removal of petrol subsidy. That really was a major catalyst to all of this, to the major spike that we have had. And of course, the government didn't seem quite ready to provide an answer for the aftermath of the removal, and we are all still waiting on it. Was it something that should have been done? Yes, but it does seem that the management of the fallout have obviously been better. Now, how long are we going to go through this? I guess the jury is out on that. The answer is blowing in the wind. It's not likely going to be anytime soon. And whatever survey of statistics you're looking at, whether it's the World Bank, whether it's the IMF, or whatever figures or numbers you're looking at, it's clearly a suggestion that we are going to be in this for a very, very long time, and therefore we all have to really brace up for what's coming.
Now there's a saying that when you're in the hole, when you find yourself in one, you stop digging. Yet Nigeria continues to borrow money, a substantial part of which is used to finance the cost of governance, the ostentatious living of the political elite. What do you think about this?
I think it should stop. I think it honestly should stop. But to stop it, the beneficiaries will not on their own. It's very unlikely, let me say, that the beneficiaries will stop this trout feeding on or by themselves. It's very unlikely. There has to be pressure, significant pressure from civil society, pressure from communities, pressure from media, pressure from the media. That is the only way. And you see what has happened recently with all the publications out there and how some state governments have been struggling hard to explain some of the, quite honestly, the obscene expenses that have been put out there. But transparency has also helped. The fact that some of the state governments, some of these figures, which ordinarily have been swept under the rug in the past, are out there in the open. So we have to take much closer interest in really drilling down when some of these numbers, whether it's the appropriation bill or expenses in our local communities, we have to take special interest in holding government to account. Otherwise, government in and by itself will not likely stop, except it is forced or pressure to do so.
Now let's talk about palliatives. Over time, you expect that if you go out there or when the government makes a pronouncement that there are palliatives for people, you find people actually having a sense of relief because they have been supported. But this is not the case. Quite so.
Well, palliative or palliatives, depending on how whatever way you want to put it, it's basically band-aid. Really, it's not. It's that's what it is. Unfortunately, it has acquired a very notorious name in Nigeria because of what we saw in the aftermath of the COVID-19 experience.
And SARS.
It's a very sad and regrettable thing that happened in the very current case where the federal government released part of the money that was supposed to go to the states, and then the number of state governments within the parallel market converted the money into dollars and cleared. That really shouldn't happen. I guess that was also the point that Labour was trying to make when it insisted that state governments, that it wasn't just part of discussion between state governments and the federal government about those palliatives, and that was borne out by what we saw. All right, so yes, it's important to take immediate stopgap or ameliorative measures, okay, to deal with the crises that are. But we have to find a way to deal with the medium to long-term issues regarding food security, and that really is something that is really urgent. We have to find a way of dealing with that, and that would also, of course, mean dealing with the problem of insecurity. Because as long as you have the scale of insecurity that we have across major food baskets in the country, the farmers will not go to farm; they will feel secure to farm. As long as you have the problem that we have with infrastructure, then even where you have surpluses, in areas where you have surpluses, those surpluses cannot be brought, to the market. So there's a whole raft of issues that will have to be dealt with for us to be able to tackle the problem of food security.
All right, thank you very much. There's so much angst on the streets, as your column title suggests. Now, the state government, the subnational governments, by which I mean the local governments and the states, are not doing sufficient to even in any way, complement or supplement what the government at the center is trying to do. What do you think is the way out of this?
Well, the way out is that people in the different communities will have to organize themselves and find ways of holding the people who they have elected to account. I just watched a video before I came into the studio about what happened in Canada, where Justin Trudeau went into a restaurant just to, I think, just to have a meal, and people in the restaurant started, screaming and chanting, trying to voice their disgust with what's going on in the Middle East. And Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, was forced to leave that restaurant literally with eggshells on his face. So until you hold public officers to account and hold their feet to the fire, it's impossible for them to respond to some of these problems.
All right, we have to learn to hold our public officers to account, and this is where we draw the curtain on this segment, interactive segment of Conversations with Us. Please visit our blog, where you find a rich potpourri of materials that are placed there for your benefit. Conversations with Azu is published on the back page of Leadership of every Friday and syndicated on online platforms, Vanguard Newspaper, across other countries in Africa. Thanks for coming on the show, Azu.
Thanks very much for having me.